This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Today's discussion is the federal deficit doubles to $2 trillion in 2023. So here's the story. The federal deficit, the amount that the government spends versus what it takes in, has now it's doubled from last year. It was $1 trillion last year. It's $2 trillion for fiscal year 2023. That means about 6.4 trillion went out, about 4.3 trillion or so came in through tax receipts and otherwise. Those are absolutely abominable numbers. Think about if you were in a household and you brought in $200,000 and spent 400,000. That's close to what this looks like and feels like, or something like that. Or maybe a better example is you brought in 430,000 and spent 630,000. Either way, over the long run, that's not a sustainable concept. Multiple drivers of the deficit increasing this year: higher Social Security payments, higher Medicare payments, higher interest rate payments, and lower tax receipts. And the lower tax receipts were less than projected, largely because last year the markets were down and there weren't nearly as much capital gains as expected, and just people didn't make as much money last year as expected. So you've got multiple different factors that led to it. At the end of the day, somehow or another, we're going to have to close that gap in this country. We're going to have to bring spending down back to a more normalized number. 6 trillion, 6.3 trillion is just too much. We're ultimately, unfortunately, going to probably have to bring taxes up some, which I know is completely unpopular amongst many colleagues who just think the government spending is out of control. I tend to agree with that. But one way or another, we're going to have no choice but to raise taxes to try and reduce some of this gap. But there's going to have to be some kind of balance between the two. These deficit numbers, I would have never thought I'd be a person that says, my God, I long for the times of Bill Clinton, because I was never a particular Bill Clinton fan. Although in hindsight, we had balanced budgets under Bill Clinton, something it feels like we've not had ever since. And again, everybody could have a million different excuses for it. Trump had excuses for it. Biden has excuses for it. But at the end of the day, federal deficits of $2 trillion a year are not sustainable numbers. We got to figure out some way to bring those under control. And it's some mix of pay as you go. It's some mix of spending less and taxing more to bridge that gap. But it's getting to the point that's going to be quite alarming over time. And it's going to lead interest rates to also be higher. And that's also no good for the federal deficit, because it adds to it as well, because then the government's paying higher interest rates on the debt that it has. So again, deficits reached $2 trillion last year. That's an abominable number. If you listen to this all the way through, you could add to my deficit. You could text me at 773-766-5322. You have to tell me that you're adding to my deficit, and we will send you a $100 Amazon gift certificate. You got to be the first person that responds. You can't be somebody who's won the gift certificate anywhere in the near recent past. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Podcast. We sure appreciate the chance to get a chance to visit with you. Thank you so much.